GM, everyone. Thanks all of you for tuning in today for the first episode of Kaloh's podcast. All right, so I'll take a couple of minutes to talk about the plan for the show. This is the first episode, and yeah, I want to share a bit of the intention and why I'm creating this podcast slash Twitter space. So, in a nutshell, I think it's very meaningful, and the best way to learn from the creators in the space is to have live conversations. So, I will be hosting interviews and discussions with artists, creators, collectors, community members, and different players in the digital art world. And again, the goal will be to learn and understand what's happening and what comes next in the digital art movement. So you can expect discussions about art process, inspiration, also markets, what's happening in the markets, new products, and new trends. So we'll also see how it evolves over time. We might change a bit here and there, but that's the main goal at the moment. And in terms of the format, I will be doing these Twitter Spaces every Monday. I would like to keep the schedule flexible, but the plan is to do it on Mondays. The timing might change as well, so we can accommodate the different guests, but you can mark your Mondays at least for the next couple of months. Then after, I will upload the episodes on my Substack newsletter, and also in the different podcast platforms. So you can also listen afterwards if you are not able to join live. If you join live, I want to create a special setup where we can distribute POAPs, right? So proof of attendance. I'm still figuring out the details, but if you want to get the POAP for the first episode, you can go in the bottom right, and in the chat, you can either reply with a question for our guest today, which is Jordan Lyall. I will get to Jordan in a bit, or answer with who will you like to see in the future of the podcast? Which guests will you like to see? So if you reply during the space with those two tweets, you will get the POAP for this Twitter space. And all right, so that's the plan. And I'm super excited to have Jordan Lyall here today, who has been a community member of my newsletter for around a year. And he's also a fantastic collector and entrepreneur. He has multiple products in a company called VenturePunk, which I'm very excited to learn more about that. And more recently, he is working on Prohibition art, which is a new generative marketplace on the Arbitrum blockchain. So, Jordan, thanks a lot for joining. I know it's the holidays in the US. Thanks for taking the time. How are you?
Hey, Kaloh, doing very well. Thanks for having me. Congrats on the first episode.
Thank you, and thanks again for joining. I know it's a long holiday in the US and it's a morning. Where are you based exactly in the US, Jordan?
I'm in Southern California, Orange County, right outside of LA. So it's 8 a.m. Monday morning for me,
Oh,
bright
wow.
and early.
Pretty early. You got
But I couldn't
your
miss it.
coffee? You have your coffee with you?
I got my coffee brewing right now.
Awesome. Great. So, Jordan, let's jump directly into the prohibition. I really want to understand what's prohibition, what's the plan. So, can you tell us in a summary of what you are working on right now?
Yeah, for sure. Prohibition is a generative art NFT platform. It's as simple as that. And we've seen a lot of platforms and projects launch in the last couple of months. But kind of the twist is, as you were mentioning, it's on Arbitrum, which is an Ethereum layer 2 protocol. It's also powered by Artblock's engine. We all know Artblock's kind of the godfather of on-chain generative art. We're using their same tech under the hood. And because it's on a layer 2, it's fast, cheap, and very inexpensive for artists to release art. And we're taking this approach where it's open. So where a lot of generative art, especially on Ethereum, is very curated and exclusive and closed off, we are taking more of an open approach where anyone can use our platform. It's permissionless, and we're really focusing on accessibility. We want to lower the bar to create art. We want to make it really easy to release art on our platform if you're a generative artist. And we want to encourage new people, net new collectors to, explore this generative art world. And we launch in just a couple of weeks, and yeah, really excited to get this out.
That sounds awesome. I have so many questions, Jordan, but I know you have been working on this platform for a while. I know there are already artists working on their collections there. I've seen some screenshots. When did you start working on Prohibition?
The idea really surfaced, I would say, November of last year, so fall of last year. And as we'll get into in a bit, my company VenturePunk, we're a builder, we're an incubator, we're a product experimentation factory, as I like to call it. So we had a bunch of other projects in the pipeline. So though we've been thinking about it for maybe 9, 10 months now, we've really been building for the last 4 or 5 months pretty solidly.
Yeah, and I know I've seen you, sharing different bits about Prohibition and how many artists are already working on in their collections, Jordan? You can share that.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit. I don't know the exact numbers, maybe in the 50 plus range of beta access to the platform. Just a couple of months ago, we launched a artist only Discord. And so we have just around 200 artists and creators in our Discord. And I'd probably say maybe half of that have access to the beta, and we're continuing to roll out access. So we'll have a lot of artists, right out of the gate here, release some work. And we're actually teeing up a handful, even though it's a permissionless kind of open platform. We've coordinated with a group of 11 artists for projects 0 through 10. And in the coming weeks, we'll start to announce who these artists are. But it's a really good mix of artists, from people that have already released art on Art Blocks, artists that have already released on Tezos, artists that are maybe known for their NFT work, but this is their first kind of venture into generative art. And we're seeing some newcomers and everything in between. That's quite a bit of talent already primed to release on the platform.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, I mean, I understand that creating such a platform and building on top of Ethereum, you need to test everything. So that's the best approach to get access to a few artists and then make sure that everything is working correctly. And I didn't know you were lining up the first 10 collections. That's interesting because usually those tend to be the iconic ones for the sake of being the first 10. That's really interesting. If you look at FX hash, the first 10 are iconic because of the number. RGBs and the logos on FX hash, those are the first collections. So that's really, really interesting. And Jordan, can you take us through the process? So let's say I'm a collector. I would like to collect on Prohibition. So I need to wait until the platform opens. But then how does it work? Because I think many people aren't really familiar with Arbitrum. I have used it in the past, but I know that you need to bridge some ETH to Arbitrum. So what will be the process? Can you walk us through that?
Sure. Yeah, we've got a process for immediately once we launch, and then we have a process, as we grow. But immediately at launch, the easiest thing to do is to bridge, or the most straightforward, I should say, is to bridge ETH from mainnet to Arbitrum. And we'll have documentations, we'll have a bridge, we'll make it easy for users to do this. But you're taking, Ether on mainnet Ethereum, and you're moving that over to a new chain. It's an L2. It's It's a lot easier than moving something over from, Ethereum to Tezos. It's in the same network, but it just happens to be sitting on a different, layer blockchain. And thankfully with Arbitrum, they make it so easy, relatively quick and cost effective to move Ether over from mainnet to Arbitrum. And that's the main asset on Arbitrum. Even though there's the ARB token that's really used for DAO voting, the main asset for the Arbitrum network is Ethereum. So you don't have to swap. You just really need to move Ethereum ETH over to Arbitrum, and that's it. Connect your wallet to Prohibition, and you'll be able to. We'll have both primary sales on our platform, and they'll happen in the way of fixed prices as well as Dutch auctions. So similar to the other platforms, an artist can choose between a fixed price and a Dutch auction, where it counts down and the price lowers as people bid. And then we'll also have a secondary market on our platform, so users can buy and sell right from the Prohibition site on a secondary. And that's all done using Ethereum on the Arbitrum blockchain. So yeah, first step is bridging. Over time, we'll release tools and services that make it even easier to be able to buy from any token on any chain, or to buy from credit card or bank account. So some of those will be coming soon. But the most straightforward thing is bridging assets over, particularly ETH, over to the Arbitrum blockchain.
That makes sense. I mean, there is this small friction, but the advantage is that basically the gas fees are non-existent. It's basically $0 to mint and to operate once you are in Arbitrum. That's
once you get over there, it's right. Once you're over on Arbitrum and you have assets, you have ETH, it's all very inexpensive, and it's very negligible, especially if you're a collector. You're spending maybe a few cents to collect an NFT. Conversely, what I think is really cool as well, and has really been a creative unlock for a lot of the artists that we've been working with, is that as an artist, submitting, it's a little bit different, because I mentioned we're using Artblock's engine. FX Hash artists, they know it's very cost effective, almost free to release anything. However, on the Artblock side, this is all on chain. Everything is on chain. So which means you need to submit your entire script to the blockchain. It literally stores the script in a smart contract. And on mainnet Ethereum, depending on the time of day and the network throughput, you may end up spending a few $1,000s, depending on the size of your script. You may be spending a couple ETH as an artist just to, upload your algorithm to the Ethereum blockchain. That's really cost prohibitive for a lot of artists, especially, taking kind of a risk on a new platform. But with Arbitrum, we ran some early tests, and we continue to test, and it's really a cost savings of 90% to 95%. So we're able to get, versus Ethereum, we're able to get those fees for an artist to release on our platform a lot lower, and it's still on chain. So instead of costing, several $1,000s, it's maybe, $30 or $40, depending on the size of the script. So there is still a little bit of a fee, but that's a decision we made. We wanted to make sure everything was stored on chain, and I think there's a benefit of doing that for the long term. But in doing that, it opens up the artist to, okay, I'm not limited to 20 or 30 kilobytes of file size. I can actually expand this. So we're seeing projects that are up to 150 kilobytes, 200 kilobytes, some even up to 300 kilobytes, and they're able to get these scripts, pretty complex scripts, loaded on the blockchain for, like I mentioned, 5 to 10% of what it would cost you on Ethereum. So artists have been able to just kind of expand the palette, or the canvas, so to speak. add in more complicated scripts, add in variables that may only come up every once in a while, add in other assets, add in, text, for example, which is very heavy. So it's been really interesting to see, and I know we'll continue to be surprised as we roll this out. Just like now that the artists have so much room for additional components in their script, it'll be interesting to see how they use this.
Yeah, totally. And I can also see the benefits for collectors. So if they want
Mm-hmm.
to collect on the secondary market, the gas fees are lower. Also, if they want to list. So yeah, there are many benefits of something like that. I see that all the time on Tesos and on FX Hash. That's one of the main reasons why the secondary market is very active. It's more about the volume in that regard. When you think about FX Hash, there is a lot of volume for collections that maybe don't have a high floor, but you can see collections that are, let's say, pieces, $10, $15, $20. They are moving a lot because the gas is below $1. So I can see that happening on Prohibition, which is great because then it opens the door for high, let's say, top, how can we call it, like collections with a very high floor moving, but also the mid and lower collections in terms of the price, that we could also see potentially movement there, which is great for smaller artists or new artists, so they are not blocked by the fees and the gas fees, etc. So that's great, Jordan. And I just want
Yeah.
to, before we continue, I just want to tell everybody on the space that maybe joined recently that this is the first episode of the Twitter space. It will happen every Monday, and then I will send it through Substack and I will upload it to all the different podcasting platforms. So if you cannot join every Monday, you can subscribe to my newsletter and you can receive it. And yeah, the goal is to have one-on-one conversations and discussions about art, digital art, with collectors and founders like Jordan, but also with artists in the future. So remember the Mondays around this time if you want to be here live. And Jordan, continuing with the conversation, I'm very interested in the art blocks engine. I know you are an entrepreneur, and they have this new business model that they have been sharing and adapting for a while, which is
Mm-hmm.
giving the art blocks engine technology to galleries, to platforms like in your case. Can you tell me from your perspective, why is that you decided to go with the Arblox engine instead of building your own engine? What are the benefits from your point of view?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we chose to build on ArtBlock's engine for a number of reasons. Number one, I wanted to get this thing live. I wanted to get Prohibition live sooner rather than later. And by building on top of kind of a trusted, secure platform, there's time savings and cost savings versus having to build something from scratch. The for me, getting a solution for artists and creators live in a timely manner was more important than building everything perfectly from scratch. So there's a time component, and then it's by attaching us to a big, well-known brand, we get the benefit of a big brand behind us that I think a lot of people are seeing the benefits of. Like, not everyone can build on top of ArtBlock's engine. There is kind of a process to go through, and they don't just let anyone jump in and start building. It's more of a partnership. So to partner with ArtBlocks and ArtBlocks engine was really important to us because it shows artists and it shows collectors that we're not just kind of a fly-by-night organization. This is just not just like a side project for us, that this is something that we want to take pride in. ArtBlocks and ArtBlocks engine they've been amazing partners so far. We're the first ArtBlocks engine partner to release on a layer 2. When we chose Arbitrum, they started developing for Arbitrum, and we put our development teams together and had support for Arbitrum. We're also the first ArtBlocks engine partner to be open. Everything else is very curated. We're the first open platform running on ArtBlocks Engine. And we're also the first ArtBlocks Engine partner to be redesigning the artist portal from scratch. Everyone else on the ArtBlocks Engine side of things, they really just use the ArtBlocks tools, which, they've been around for a couple of years now. So the underlying tech is where it's at. That's what we're utilizing. But we're totally recreating the interface and the tools and the testing tools and the script management and the IDE. We're making it really easy for artists and coders to leverage this tech. So it was just kind of a match made in heaven. The founder of ArtBlocks, Snowfro, is also a friend and an investor in my company, VenturePunk. So it just made perfect sense. While we leveraged them initially at launch, we'll continue to evaluate tools, and there may be other tools that we offer, alongside the ArtBlocks Engine platform as we think about other ways to leverage this tech and maybe leverage AI and some other off-chain stuff. But we are all in on ArtBlocks Engine, at least at launch.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense from a security perspective, from a time perspective to get things done quickly. And also, I mean, you can kind of focus on other important aspects of the platform. So the engine, the
Yep.
minting engine is very important, and of course for artists, for collectors. But now you can also focus on other experiences. Like you can make it quick, and you can make maybe different things for collectors, that how to showcase their collection. I mean, I can think of different ideas, but is this something that you guys are prioritizing? So kind of you have the engine there to mint and to put everything on chain. What are other pieces of the platform besides the minting, the generative minting, that you are working on and that you think people will get excited about?
Yeah, you're totally right. We can kind of, there's still been a lot of work, as mentioned. We're kind of the guinea pig in this case as the first open and layer 2 project. But by knowing that, like, the underlying smart contracts and the minting engine are taken care of by such a great partner and organization in this space, you're right. It allows us to focus on other things. So we've been putting a lot of attention into user experience overall, both for artists and collectors. I mentioned we redesigned the experience. We put a lot of time into, on the artist side, creating an IDE. So it's an online code editor. So many artists are building locally and then pasting their code in on our site. Many of them are using our provided IDE or code editor on our platform. And we really provide a lot of different ways to test at different devices, different screen sizes, test across different browsers. We try to make it really easy to use and really straightforward in how you set up the project. And then, as mentioned, we're also launching a secondary market on day one. So you won't have to go to another site similar to FXHash and other sites. It's the secondary market is built in. But even outside of the tech, and I've always been, as mentioned, just kind of a digital entrepreneur for almost 20 years now. You wouldn't really look at anything that I've built and you say, wow, that tech is amazing. But you'd say how that idea is amazing, or that community is great, or the user experience is great. I think so much goes into a product that people love that just goes well beyond the tech itself. Of course, you need great tech and you need underlying technology and proven, trusted tech under the hood. But design has always been important. The level of support and customer support and artist support that's given on social and on Discord, the overall vibe and content that we're putting out, the time and attention that we're giving to each individual artist and collector. So for me, it's so important that it's not just like we have so much in crypto over the last decade has been, products that are built by developers for developers, right? So everything I've done in this space has really just been thinking about, okay, well, what do I want to see as a non-engineer? What do I want to see? And someone who's been deep into this space, particularly generative art NFTs like myself, Like, wouldn't it be great if it was effortless to acquire a new asset, or effortless to, for example, view all the different outputs, or explore the outputs and all the attributes of a generative art project. So that's something that we're also rolling out to allow people to really explore the generative, kind of the whole collection. A lot of times you see the initial, you see token 0, but that doesn't give you a good sense of the entire collection. So we want to help make that easier and provide a lot of sample outputs and things like that. We're doing a lot already in the way of like providing content. As mentioned in our Discord, it's very artist focused at the moment. But in the next few days and weeks, we'll start rolling out access to collectors and to the public, and we'll continue this thread of providing content useful for artists, useful for collectors. Generative art history. We'll do walkthroughs on different tools in addition to ours. We'll talk about P5.js versus 3.js. So when we say we want to make this stuff accessible and really lower the bar, it's beyond the tech, right? It's also in how we present this stuff and communicate this stuff and who we're targeting. We're trying to be this holistic community for generative art enthusiasts, which I think can be, for so many more people, millions of people really should be enjoying this type of work and this type of tech. So yeah, definitely rambling there, but you can tell I'm excited about just, my vision is to, the fun that I had in the early days of Art Blocks and Tezos, and I'm sure you can agree with this, is just like in the early days, it was just about exploration and experimentation, and we haven't seen this before, and this is amazing, and this is all on chain, and this is a great expression from artists, and especially in the early days of Art Blocks with the squiggles, and like it was just under $100, sometimes a couple $100, and it was more about the love of it and the fun and like the chance that you might get something rare. My goal is to kind of bring that vibe to millions of people, many people who are kind of either priced out or just aren't aware of this stuff and aren't able to access this stuff. The goal is to just kind of break down those walls and be inclusive and build up this community around generative art NFTs.
That sounds fantastic, Jordan. And I mean, from the things you mentioned, I took note on two. First, the community building. And I know you have been building communities. I know you have Skylab, which is a community of founders, which I would love to hear more about. But also, another topic that I have here in my notes, and you mentioned the early days of art blogs and the early days of FX Hash, where it was more about experimenting and chatting with people about art and discovering new artists, and it was pretty accessible. And then the money values started to skyrocket and the floors. But early on, it's about discovery and both artists and artworks, and even a bit of the technology, like blockchain technology. In the case of Gen Art, coding, like how are they making these collections? So with those things in mind, community building in the early days of the generative art, let's call it the first platforms, I think you know how to build this thing. So can you tell us, let's jump first into your art collection, because I was looking at your Deca. No, it wasn't Deca, it was a gallery.so, that's the one
Mm-hmm.
you have. And you have multiple squiggles, and you have one from, I think it's from day zero. Those are the ones that were minted on the first day. I wonder, did you mint that one, Jordan, or did you acquire that one later on?
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. I do have several squiggles. The day zero squiggle I did pick up after the fact. I picked it up last year. It was essentially on the floor. No one realized that they had a day zero squiggle. I actually have two day zero squiggles. I have one of the first. I have number 90, so it's a double digit. It's a number 90 fuzzy. It's one of the first fuzzies. And then I also have, I think it's 541. It's the last day zero minted. So I have two day zeros. Unfortunately, neither of those I minted. I just picked up after the fact, after, seeing them on the floor, no one realizing that they had something special. And, there were a couple normals that I bought early on. I didn't mint any squiggles, but I bought them pretty early on the secondary for, zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.2 ETH. I think either at the end of 2020 or early 21. So yeah, that's been a project that obviously, they're iconic. They mean a lot to people in this space. But for me personally, it was just really my entry into on-chain generative art. I've been in crypto a long time. I bought Bitcoin in 2013, several other altcoins and things like that for the next few years. But then Ethereum in 2017, I minted CryptoKitties in 2017. I've been aware of NFTs for a long time and been collecting some one-of-ones here and there, and as a product builder, experimenting with NFTs. But it wasn't until 2020 when I really got in deep with, an early project that I launched in August of 2020. So I've been around for a long time, and it really was art blocks, and specifically the squiggle, that really just like was kind of a splash of water in the face of like, this is different. This is more than just, attach a JPEG to a token. It's more like, when we think of long form generative art, meaning that the minter, the collector, actually, depending on when they mint and their particular, wallet, as they mint it, it really creates the hash that creates the artwork itself. So that was just fascinating to me. And so yeah, that's been such a collection that has had an impact on me. So I've got a good, I've probably got 6 or 7 squiggles, and that includes the 2 zeros that I mentioned. I was also part of, it was last year or the year before, there was a Venus over Manhattan mint where Snowfro opened up about 100 to mint. So I was part of that, and so I've got a signed frame with the squiggle with Snowfro. So most of my squiggles all have that personal connection, and it's been so fun to become friends with Snowfro, and really to just have that be a centerpiece of my collection.
Yeah, that's a fantastic history. I mean, you have been around since CryptoKitties. You have seen the up and downs of the space. What will you tell Jordan artists and collectors that maybe are newer, maybe they joined over the last year or over the last 2 years? And right now the space is a bit the markets mostly, because I still think there are very strong communities. I have many friends, I have many readers that are really still around, and they are very excited and they are still collecting. But what will you tell those people that are a bit down during these times? So you have been around for, I think you said 2017, maybe before, so it's over 6 years. So what will you tell them? What's your experience when the times were in the best times? What will you tell those people these days?
Yeah, you're right. I've been around for 10 years now, dating back to first time getting into Bitcoin. And it's really hard in these days, even for someone that's been building and participating in this space. It's tough when kind of the markets collapse, and there is this sense of FUD, if you will. But as someone who's been in it for so long, you start to realize how cyclical it is, and to not let your lows get too low, and to not let your highs get too high, and try to be centered. And because it is this, human nature is cyclical, try to kind of zoom out, take the forest through the trees, and realize that, the markets will turn. It may not be every NFT that we've purchased over the last couple of years that goes up a ton in value, but there will be something that moves forward. So continue to explore, continue to experiment, chase what interests you rather than what you think might be the next big thing. Don't FOMO into things. Set aside things that you want to hold on forever. Set aside things that you're willing to let go of. But all this is cyclical, and I've been through a couple of ups and down markets now in the last decade, and it's still tough. But when you know that things will turn around, it makes it easier to build and take risks. So I would just say follow what is most interesting to you. Stay curious, especially in these down times. I would say create. There's probably a lot of people that are really just here to collect and buy something low and sell something high, and that's okay. We need a healthy market. But I think so many more people should be creators. And by creators, I don't necessarily mean you're a coder or you're one of one artist, or I just mean everyone can be creating value for the community. Join a DAO or Discord group or Telegram group. Create content. Create connections. Find a coder and an artist and put them together. There's so many different ways for people to add value, I think, in addition to actually being an artist or a coder. So I would just encourage everyone to continue following their curiosities and just like give back and contribute to this space.
Yeah, that's great advice. I like the idea of creating not only art, create value, and there are many ways of doing that. Even like content, you can write, you can create videos, educational content, you can create communities, and that takes me to the next question. But before that, just a reminder, we have around 15 minutes left. If you would like to get the POAP, so the proof of attendance is a token for the first episode, you can leave a reply in the bottom right. There is a chat icon. You can either ask a question to Jordan or reply with who would you like to see in the podcast in the future. So bottom right, there is a chat icon. And yeah, I was mentioning communities. So Jordan, I know you built a Skylab. Can you tell us a bit about that community? What is it all about?
Yeah, thank you. So as mentioned, I've been in this space for a while and was in a bunch of communities, and there's so much value just in being on Twitter, on being in different groups and communities, whether it's PFP based or just friends hanging out. I was in a lot of groups, but they were mostly profit driven, right? Like alpha and sharing alpha. As a builder, as an entrepreneur, as a product builder, as someone who wants to build in this space, I didn't have a community to be with other builders. So I launched Skylab last year in May of 22, just as a way of getting people like me together. And that's people that are building products, building communities, building companies, building teams. So I launched this community called Skylab, and it's slowly growing. We've got several hundred members, and I like to kind of think of it as like therapy, group therapy for Web3 founders. And that's really like once a week we get together on a call and we just kind of share what we're struggling with and or what we need. Hey, I need to hire a smart contract engineer, or hey, I need to do this. And it's just a way to getting like people that are building in the space to kind of lift each other up and help each other take the next step and give feedback on product, give feedback on pitch decks, and help people raise. And so it's been a very valuable to just have a group of people that I can bounce ideas off of. And a lot of people have found it as valuable. So it's been great. It's been over a year now. We've had a number of in-person meetups as well. We have educational sessions and spaces and just try to be a resource for founders and builders in this space.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to, start something. Is when you have a problem and you try to solve it. So in your case, I think that worked pretty well. And I wonder, so Prohibition, the idea, you said you were brainstorming about a few ideas for a while. You had other ideas in your list. Did the idea came from this group from Skylab, and did you also, let's say, partner up with other members to create Prohibition?
In a way, yeah. So Skylab is our kind of private community of builders, and then VenturePunk is my corporation. So they're, one's open and another one is like a for-profit company. So VenturePunk is, a venture-backed startup, and our goal is to create different experiments in Web3. So Skylab is a project under VenturePunk, and we've also launched a handful of other NFT projects, including Levels.art and Raccoons and Santa.fm. So we've launched a handful of NFT projects in the last year. As mentioned, is kind of one of my biggest passions in this space is on-chain long-form generative art. I just knew that at some point I'd be doing something in this space, in this area, and the timing was right to build something, a generative art platform on a layer two. Like last year, it wouldn't have made too much sense, but now we've gotten, there's a lot of activity on Arbitrum. There's a lot of more openness to layer twos and tools and tech and education. So it just felt like the right time to finally throw our hat in the ring and say, hey, we've got an idea of a generative art platform. And of course, thankfully to investors in VenturePunk and the Skylab community, we had this instant sounding board where, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you guys think? And getting early feedback, or here's how I'm positioning it, and they're quick to give feedback. So it's been, a lot of people talk about building in public. We're doing that for sure because I'm pretty vocal. Maybe it's it's on Twitter. I've been talking about this platform a lot. I'm sure people are getting tired of me talking about it. And they want to use it, whether it's, in my investor community or in the Skylab community. Just try to be open. And because as you mentioned, building, solving my problem is great. And I love building products that solve a need for me. But if I'm the only user, then we've got a problem, right? So I love to just talk to other users and other builders, and then you only get this over time. But it's like, get feedback from everyone, but know whose feedback to listen to and whose feedback to throw out, and that only comes with experience, right? So you want to listen to everyone, but then have the context of saying, hey, these guys know what they're talking about because of X, Y, and Z, and certain pieces of feedback you need to accept, and certain pieces of feedback you need to set aside. But it's always been, everything that I've built has really been more of a communal thing, and it's been for community. So it's a fun way to build.
Yeah, totally. I do that a bit with my articles and with the Blind Gallery, also building Kalos Space, which is an aggregator for gen art markets. So you can check the hot collections, trending artists. And I try to be very open about it. But as you said, there is it's tricky because you start to get feedback, and you need to be to have like a filter to filter the good stuff from the bad, let's call it bad stuff. But also I've
Mm-hmm.
seen that artists, there are many artists that do that. They share their process when they are creating their collections, when they are working on their art, and they also get feedback. One sort of feedback is through engagement, like likes, shares, retweets, comments. But then they might get, feedback to update it or to add something. And they also, it's like an art on itself to how to, react to feedback. And yeah, it's interesting that it's a similar thing for creators, for builders like yourself, and for artists. It's a similar thing. Jordan, I have a question here from, anybody in the crowd. If you want to ask questions to Jordan, you can do that in the bottom right. We have a chat icon. And Carolina has some questions for you. First, she says congrats on the launch. And she's asking if Arbitrum is greener. Is it a green blockchain? Can you tell us a bit about that aspect of Arbitrum?
Sure. Yeah. For the last couple of years, that's always something that people think about because Ethereum was proof of work up until last year. I would say it is greener just in the mechanism that it uses proof of stake. So it's definitely greener than mainnet Ethereum, even though mainnet Ethereum has come a long way. Yeah, a lot less infrastructure needed. Obviously, as proof of stake, there's no computers that need to be running. So it's a greener option than a lot of other blockchains. Yeah, so it's almost like a given. Like anything that we build now is going to be green, and there's always going to be improvements, and there's always still kind of like carbon offsets that we can do, and there's always room for improvement, but it's the greenest option that we have at the moment.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? And Ethereum, they made this the what they call the merge a few
Yep.
months ago. So it's a green solution. What's not green or very green at the moment is a Bitcoin. That there is a big argument about ordinals, but that's a topic for another episode. Another question, Jordan. So people are asking in the tweets, why the name Prohibition for an open platform?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. We're calling it prohibition, which means to stop somebody from doing something, but the whole idea is that it's an open platform. I kind of like the that we're flipping it on its head, the word, for a few reasons. And I like I really like the ability, because just when you name something and people have a question about it, it gets in people's heads and it causes them to look into it. I wanted to do something different, and I've always been a fan of brands and branding, so I pay a lot of attention and a lot of resources in terms of coming up with a great brand. And for me, it really fit the vibe that we were going for, in terms of it's a little bit for those of us that went through U.S. history. We learned about the prohibition in the 1920s and 30s, which was banning the sale of alcohol. So many international listeners may not be aware of this era in the U.S. 100 years ago, but there was this time where alcohol was illegal, and it was called prohibition, and you know, it was federal law that you couldn't that banned the sale of alcohol. And 100 years later, we kind of laugh at that, but the vibes that were created, the culture, the style, the creativity that came out of that period, both in art and music and culture, it evokes kind of this style. There was this kind of system of underground, what they called speakeasies, which was like underground clubs that people would participate in. So it's really this kind of it evokes a style for a lot of people. It's very underground. It's very counterculture. It's very punk, which is another thing that I liked about it. So it really it speaks to our ability to open something up and make something available that up until now is really just reserved for ETH whales and for a small percentage of artists that make the curation list or pass the curation board's approval. We intentionally flipping this word upside down to show that this should be open, this should be an accessible platform. And yeah, that's it. It evokes a lot of different things for some people, and the goal is really just to really stand out and be open and accessible for many different people.
Yeah, I love when there is a big concept behind a name, and that makes a lot of sense. Jordan, we're getting close to the hour. I know it's very early there in California. I really appreciate your time for being here in the first episode. One last question, and we wrap it up. So, is it all so the goal for Prohibition, the vision, will it always be generative coded art? That's another question from the audience. Or do you plan to, in the future, maybe include other forms of digital art?
Yeah, great question. The vision extends beyond generative art. I would say later this year, we'll get into off-chain assets and data. So at launch, it's primarily or it's exclusively on-chain generative art. Artblock's engine has this feature called Flex, which allows you to maybe take in a photo or take off-chain data, take weather data. So we're going to be exploring that down the road, and we've had a lot of creators ask about AI and generative AI and other tools. Look, my goal, my vision really, and all of us at Prohibition really want to turn more collectors into creators. It's cheesy, but I say, the vision is to put a paintbrush into more people's hands, because I want to show, no matter your artistic background, no matter your coding strengths, you can create. So I want to, like I said, lower that barrier, and there'll always be a place for generative art, for on-chain generative stuff, but we definitely want to, again, work with the community and listen to our creators and collectors to determine what comes next. So, no official announcement yet on what's to come later, but we're definitely open-minded of other things outside of generative art.
Right. There is also, with AI art and the intersection between both mediums. And I feel like there is room for a lot of stuff happening there.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Jordan. Again, thanks a lot for your time. It was a really exciting conversation. Also, everyone that tuned in, I think we did great for the first episode. I think it was over 60 live participants. And if you couldn't listen to the whole thing, I will be, this is getting recorded and it will be distributed through my newsletter and the different podcast platforms. So you can check out my newsletter at kaloh.xyz. Awesome, Jordan. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you all next Monday.
Thanks, Kaloh. Thanks
Have
so
a
much
good
for
one.
having me. Honored to be guest number one on your podcast. Congrats and good luck. And I've just been a fan of yours for a long time, and paying member for a year. And I'm just honored to be on your podcast. Excited to be part of your community. So just thanks so much.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see Prohibition live. I'll be waiting, Jordan. See you soon.
Me too. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.